talk about the return of maximalism. I loved this setup, so we are back in this setup. This begins the first video of me talking about whatever I want to talk about. So welcome. I'm going to keep posting how-tos and all of those sort of design things, but what I originally made this channel for was to come to videos like the one that I'm going to do today. I want to be able to talk about design influences and how things leak into culture. This is today's video. We are going to talk about maximalism, or how maximalism as a overall design is being viewed today. Before I get started, I want to say that I wrote this entire blog before I started filming. I'm very proud of that blog. Are going to have all of the sources and references that you would need in those blogs. So if you like any of the photos that I show today, if you're interested in getting more information about those topics, you can find them all there, and that will be linked below. And you can always go to the blog post that will be associated with each one of these videos. So with that being said, let's get started. Disclaimer before we start everything. I am not an art historian. I am not an art expert. I am a designer working in a design world with a design background. I have taken way too many art history classes. I have taken way too many design intensive understanding, calculating classes throughout my entire degree. So I am not an expert. If things are not correct, I apologize in advance. Please don't use this for writing papers for class or anything that's crazy. You can find all of the references, like I said, in the blog post below. Please use those as references. That would be so much better than using my video. Thank you. That's my PSA. Has maximalism returned? I wanted to do this topic because I saw so many articles in the fall of last year when we were still kind of in and out of quarantine, addressing new trends and stressing how people want to go away from this thought of minimalism. So I want to go over the two theories that kind of back to back each other. That would be minimalism versus maximalism. Minimalism in the state that it's in now has been around for what art historians want to say about 60 or so years. Minimalism can be attributed to a lot of the fine art that came out of the 60s. The black paintings from Frank Stella, there's Carl Andre and Dan Flavin and Donald Jude, which I actually saw in the San Fran MoMA, and I didn't know that he was one of the proprietors of minimalism. It began as a fine art movement that slowly seeped its way into regular life. Architecture started borrowing from it. Some modernistic designs that were including glass structures and concrete structures that had begun to pop up. They were odes to Albert Kahn and Philip Johnson, but in a more utilitarian way. 60s women's fashion and work attire had begun to slim down. It was being useful. It was being comfortable. Furniture design began to become clean. The molded wood chair, as long as the fiberglass chair, had been around for almost decades at this point, but it wasn't greatly adopted by the masses until the 50s, 60s. So these generally utilitarian designs gave way to minimalism. When minimalism became philosophy, it was post-war in America. We were no longer looking for all of those goods that we had not been able to get during the war, but we were almost looking for a new way to live and a new way to uphold ourselves. And minimalism completed this. As the minimalist philosophy, we gave way to fewer possessions, and we started becoming very intentional with the possessions that we were gathering. And this new mindful freedom had freed us from what modern weights we had. Fast forward to the 2010s, you can see a minimalist philosophy being extended as far as it can be. You're seeing tiny homes, you're seeing van life. These became huge aspirations for generations to drop almost all of their possessions and become this non-consumer, anti-culture nomad almost. We are seeing very strategic new designs coming in how people store things and where they go and what we're using for multiple things a day. It's being shown that you don't need all the space as you would in the general white picket fence American dream. So after the philosophy of minimalism is examined, I think that there's more an interest in it being kind of the clear set of design of what we talk about today. It's a lot of people's first step. It's a lot of people's baseline, and it's a lot of people's belief that this is what good design is. And I think that baseline has been almost starting to be rejected because now it's the commonplace for design. It's the playbook almost for what you should be doing as a designer. So I love minimalism. And when I saw maximalism being a return, I was not thrilled. I'm gonna say return because maximalism is almost a subculture in what we have already been experiencing as this minimalist movement. I think that it's more of its time to come around, but don't. In a concept sense, it is a rework of an old concept into a modern one. I look at the Victorian era as one of the most lavish, garnished, detailed eras that there were. When Queen Victoria took the throne, she had not only made crazy large changes in the Parliament, First Industrial Revolution, political change, social change, and even design change. She had this lavish outlook of pairing patterns and colors and details, woodworking. Almost everything had some kind of contrast to it in their entire house. But that Victorian era has not gone away from us. I mean, you can attribute it to 1930s Hollywood glam. All of those things can be attributed back to what Queen Victoria had been doing in her era. As I said before, I started seeing articles about new maximalism in the fall of 2020. You can look at, there's a bunch of links. Architectural Digest predicted it. There was a bunch of design guides and maximalism expose pages, and Pinterest even started suggesting this aesthetic to me. Saturated colors, patterns, textures, velvets, unique pieces. But the difference, at least what I understand in this maximalism, is that the maximalism is for the design aesthetic and not for the concept. The minimalism values have filtered down so far that you almost can't get rid of them anymore. 2020 had driven that in a little bit more. As it's driving these values, it's also saying, hey, look at your area around you. Is it unique to you? Is it individual? And maximalism kind of shook hands with those people that were at home wondering what they wanted to do and how they wanted to dress up their space. Everything can be summed up in the way that these designers created maximalism. It can definitely be done in a tasteful way. It just wants to be strikingly individualized. And I do believe that that's something that minimalism has not given people, because minimalism makes a rule that it needs to be clean and straight. I think when we talk about minimalism and its long impact in different generations, over 60 years that we have been developing minimalism. And I think maximalism, as the way that it's seen now, goes hand in hand with what we are experiencing as postmodernism. So let me explain. In an understanding to decipher the first postmodernism, you can think of it as the late 20th century understanding of moving away from expectations. So pushing skepticism in theories and ideologies and trying to push new ideas. So a perfect example of the generation that came before us is Pulp Fiction, in the way that it creates a dynamic, layered storyline instead of a straight, understood storyline. I mean, there's many other movies that address this. It's just not going to the expected. The Truman Show could be another good example. It's the expectation of what life is completely flipped on its head. But we're not living in postmodernism anymore. And there's only a little bit of online jargon that I can find about this because I have read about it. I can't find the article to save my life, but I had read about this postmodernism era wrapping back around to heavy details and less modernism, which is what ultimately happened and what is ultimately happening with the maximalism movement. And that article was really interesting because I had never heard postmodernism before. I was just like, how far can we get down this rabbit hole of deciding what gauge we're in? I found it, and the internet is just its own place. The understanding of postmodernism could also be referred to as metamodernism, and it is relatively sane in the theories and ideologies part. Although deriving this pop culture in that, it's really just describing and understanding the current culture we live in. I'd like to say the current internet culture, because this just lines up to the internet for me. And I'm gonna read you a straight definition from Urban Dictionary because no one else could give me a full understanding. It's hard to, because now you have to have people that are locals and historians that have to understand these sub-internet cultures. Urban Dictionary puts it the best. Just let me read this definition to you. It describes postmodernism or metamodernism as a million layers of irony and meta-observations that coat the conceptual fabric of these people's, the people online, world perspective. Nihilistic and empty speculations centered upon nothing comprised of their reality. So, the best example, memes. And I will give you this meme because most of us have already seen it and most of us already understand. And this is the nihilistic, empty speculations, skepticism, paranoia, just general, we're making fun of the world, but we're not postmodernism. We make fun of the world because we know that this is all going to go down in flames. And in my article, I bring, in essence, memes, the internet's best downward spiraling jokesters, and I also include the obstruction of real life. So my draw from this is that maximalism is joining chaotic energy with this postmodernism, metamodernism world. So in conclusion, do I still hate maximalism? Yes. Do I have a better understanding of why this is becoming a topic and this is becoming something that people want to push towards? Yes, I totally get it. I totally understand that the world is chaotic and that the internet is chaotic and everything is just like a mash of swirling winds. I totally understand that. And I get why you would want to have some kind of art development in that. Minimalism is the thing for me though, because I can't do this. I can't do it. The wallpaper and the colors and it's just too much for me. Please, if this is your thing, express yourself in this chaotic, eccentric energy. I will not hold it against you. But that was my deep dive on maximalism, and I learned so much. If you love maximalism and want to tell me how much you love it, you can put that in the comments below. If you're an interior designer or anyone of that caliber that wants to tell me how I'm wrong in all of these things, please tell me in the comments below. Like and subscribe because it helps me a lot, and you can find all my socials on the animation at the end. Thank you guys so much, and I am so excited to keep doing more reporting videos like this, and I will see you next week. Bye!